I'm in the game. I'm in the game. Hello, I'm in the video with my daddy.
What's going on, everybody, today? So today we're going to be meeting Extremis Models, and we're going to be learning about his part of the territory, what he does. Looks like there's a couple people already watching, which is cool. But here's Josh. What's going on, man?
Guys? What's up? How's it going?
And, it's Saturday, just trying to get, through the day, things with the kids, it's always fun.
Oh yeah, mine are chilling out watching movies today while my wife works. So I'm at home with them. I'm at home with them for the day. Can't beat that.
Yeah. So where does the channel name come from?
I'm sure a lot of people probably I've probably told several people this and they probably already knew, but I'm a big comic book fan. Back when, well, I wouldn't say comic book fan, more so the characters that are portrayed. Back in the comics, there was a guy named Aldrich Killian who developed this virus called the xtremis virus, which made him like ridiculously powerful, which they actually talked about in the third Iron Man movie. And I just thought, years ago, like, what would be a cool name that's different, that you don't hear a whole lot. And that's where the xtremis namesake came from. Used it in my gamer tag on Xbox for a long time, used it on PSN and stuff like that. That's just kind of where the name came from.
Oh, that's cool. So does that kind of explain your building style and everything too?
Yeah, like a lot of what I build, I wanted it to sort of invoke power, strength, stuff like that. Which was, to me, it was really prominent with one of my recent builds, the Nighthawk, which was kind of an expression of that. And yeah, that's where that all came from. That's where the name came from.
I mean, that's the cool thing about your channel is, and we're gonna kind of get into this a little bit, but kind of where you start the build and where you end up is like two completely different levels, and it's really cool because scratch building is not easy. And how'd you start getting into that?
Well, as far back as I can remember, I've always been not just a gearhead, but I've been into other stuff also. And a lot of what I like seeing, we don't have kits for. So I've always been a really creative type of guy. I used to draw a lot when I was a kid, so I had ideas there too. But I just, with plastic, even if something that you want to see kit wise isn't available, you can go out and build it. And I think that that my creativity kind of takes over most of the time. And I don't know, I just, it's been a process. And yeah, I don't really know how to respond to that one. It just kind of happens, like I see something in my head and you know, just being real strong willed to accomplish that goal and be able to pull it off. It just kind of takes over. It's hard to explain. It's really hard to explain.
And that makes sense because I'm sure you're gonna take us on the tour, right?
Yeah, I've got a few.
Everybody will get to-
I've got a few. I've got a few in here already out,
okay.
ready to go. I could take y'all in the living room, but the kids are watching The Lion King right now, and you know how the world is these days. You get copyrighted for saying
Yeah,
something. So, but I've got a few in here right now that we can go over whenever everybody's ready.
no, but like I said, like when you see some of the stuff you've done, you could just like it's really cool visually.
Yeah.
And I've seen you on some of the hangouts how you go through that process, and it's really cool. That's
Yeah.
the one thing I like about your channel.
And like the big thing with my scratch building stuff too is in order for it to work for me, the function the form has to follow the function. Everything that I build, like all of my cars, trucks, like the chassis and everything, I've got drive shafts and everything. Try to do as much with steering as possible, just to try to get them where they look like if some crazy millionaire hot rodder in real life decided, hey, I really like the way that model looks, can it be built? And for the most part, I think the answer to that question is yes. But for me, like the form has to follow the function. If it wouldn't work physically, I won't build it because it just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. No, I mean that's really, really cool. And and like everybody's, saying in the comments, like you see things in like the fourth dimension. You know, you know what I mean? Like it's
I
really,
appreciate that.
you know. So how do you like the 3D printing part of that?
The 3D printing aspect makes stuff a lot easier. Because even as far back as I can remember, like with my first model, I think the first real model that I had was, I think it was a Revell C6 Corvette. I don't remember if it was a Z06 or a base. I just know that it was a C6 Corvette. And I wanted different wheels. And at the time, all these cool wheels and stuff didn't exist. And as a young kid, my skill set would not have allowed me at the time to try to scratch build a set of wheels or anything like that. So doing what I do with scratch building, having the aid of 3D printed parts there, really, really helps out a lot. And if there's something about a 3D print that I want to change, like for example, the engine that's in the Peterbilt that I'll show you guys later. I didn't like the factory intake that was printed with that engine, so I made my own. But having 3D printed parts readily available and having guys that 3D print in our group, it really makes stuff a lot easier.
No, and it's kind of cool that you can make both work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, because I don't know. For me, it's the seam work and stuff and some of that gets kind of interesting. How do you take care of that a lot of the time?
Like seam work, like what do you mean?
Like when you put like body lines together, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, like for example, two of the kits that I have on the desk right now have been extensively changed. Especially one of them it is nothing like the kit that it started out like. But for me, when it comes to cars and trucks, I use a lot of Bondo spot putty filler and stuff like that. With my plain stuff, because the seams aren't so prominent, I'll use like plastic putties, and a lot of it comes down to the primer that I like using too. It's a good filler primers. I use a lot of Mr. Surfacer products, but just a lot of body work, sanding, stuff like that. Get those seams knocked out.
How do you like that Mr. Surfacer on the resin 3D printed parts? Does it
As
seem to?
long It does really good. Luckily for me, a lot of the 3D printed stuff that I buy are really good quality. Now I've had some bad quality stuff before too, but even the bad quality stuff, you use like some Tamiya sanding sponge, like 600 grit, gets it real nice and flat, and you can throw a coat of Mr. Surfacer's primer on there and go back and sand it again, and then just keep building the layers up and smoothing it out. That's what I had to do with the cab that's on the Pete. The Jimmy Flintstone stuff is really, really nice once you massage it just a little bit. It's excellent, and that's what I ended up having to do with that, was go back and sand and prom and sand and prom, and eventually I got it where I wanted it.
Now the Jimmy Flintstone stuff, that's not 3D printed, that's resin casted, right?
Yeah, it's like a resin cast type stuff, because it's still like on the inside of the windows on every one of these that I've built. I've built 2 of Jimmy Flintstone's cabs, and I've got several more of their products here at the house. All of them have got like that weird like resin flashing between the windows and stuff, where it's really thin. You just take an X-Acto blade and go through there and cut it out. Some sand and sponge, you can straighten it right up. But yeah, it's all resin cast, so you've got to go in with a Dremel and clean out the insides to get stuff to fit just a little bit better. But like as far as 3D printed stuff though, you just hit it with a little bit of sandpaper, and it's most of the time it's ready to go.
So what is it that you mostly like to build? Like cars, trucks, planes?
Well, back when I was a kid and I got started building models the very first time, it was strictly cars and trucks. Like that's all I cared about was cars and trucks, because as a young boy, anything that unless you're around an air base or you've got like Air Force or Navy parents, most of the time kids are going to be more exposed to cars and trucks than they are planes. Which leads to a little bit of an interesting story for me. But I've always been a fan of both. But I was more into cars and trucks as a kid, and I got started with those. And then, of course, as a young kid, life just sort of kicks you in the face, and you got to do what you got to do. And, I decided in late 2018 that I wanted to get back into building models. Well, at the time, my big kick was planes. And I started back, early 2019, strictly building planes. That was my big thing, was building planes. And, God, in a year and a half, I probably built 15 or 20. There were a couple of projects I cranked out over the weekend, like the Blackbirds, and like both the Black Widows have got less than 36 hours of build time in them. I was addicted. And then, I saw what the automotive side of modeling had to offer in terms of, the resin aftermarket and stuff like that. If, you wanted to build a roll cage, there was styrene for that. If you wanted to build a chassis, there was styrene for that. And right now I'm kind of in between everything. I'm doing cars and trucks. I've got a B-52 behind me that's almost done. I've got 3 other projects, 2 trucks and a car that's getting worked on. Just finished a display for my M1 Abrams. I've got something that I'm working on for the kids right now. It's a little round base that looks like Earth, and it's got scrap from Ice Age on it, holding the nut. So
That's
it's yeah, it's funny you ask. It's just it's a lot of stuff. I'm into a lot of stuff right now.
because I know with me, like I'm into Warhammer,
Yeah,
cars, planes, figures.
absolutely.
I got a bunch of the Star Wars bases, I've yeah. So
Yeah,
I totally get that.
absolutely. And a lot of the techniques that I used building planes, like the marbling technique or modeling, as a lot of people like to call it, but I've always known it to be called the marbling technique. I've been able to apply that to some of the automotive builds, like the XJR F100 I just finished a while back ago. It's got a marbled olive drab paint job on it that I would have used on a plane. Um, so yeah, a lot of the weathering techniques that I've learned, I've applied to, doing model cars. The only thing that I haven't really figured out yet, and I've been picking the brains of guys like Mr. Fred Henry and Brian over at Got Fuels, is how to get that glass like finish on the cars. And the most recent car that I just finished up, it looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's certainly better than I thought I was going to be able to do. So,
And those are two good ones to ask questions about that kind of
oh
stuff.
yeah, awesome guys. I met both of them. I met both of them at AtlantaCon, the last AtlantaCon show in Marietta, and they've kind of taken me under their wing and invited me, to meet the entire crew that they usually associate with on the weekends and stuff like that. And it's been a blast. And I can't wait to see those guys in Smyrna this year at Acme. We're gonna have an awesome time, and appreciate everything that they've helped me out with over the last several months. So
No, I mean the Saturday hangout is a really good time.
yeah,
Even if you don't
yeah,
get in
it's
there a
great.
lot.
I have a blast every weekend, whether it's Brian's lives on Saturdays or Terry's lives on Sundays. We always have a great time, and it's it removes you from uh all the hard stuff that you deal with, with life. Because I work for a big tree company, and I'm always tired and wore out through the week, and having this on the weekends helps me forget about all that stuff. So
which helps your mental status for the next
yeah,
week.
and
Yeah.
that's another thing about modeling too. Like, I've not always been the easiest person to get along with, in terms of like being out in public, because I wasn't really a people person. Yeah, I've never been a people person, and that stems just from a lack of patience, I guess. And picking this up as a hobby, you cannot be a modeler and not have patience. So it's helped my people skills quite a lot. So, and having cool people like you and Brian and Fred, Miguel, Terry 1, Terry 2, Rick, Don, Frank, Mark, guys like that, having cool people to hang out with and to sort of motivate you and push you along, it really it's helped me out tremendously, and I can't thank all you guys enough.
So you're planning on going to Acme with everybody then?
Absolutely.
Have you been to Acme before?
I have not.
Okay.
I've been to three IPMS shows, since I started back modeling in 2019. Last year, I went to the Columbia, South Carolina show. I drove, I think, 4 or 5, maybe. Yeah, it may have been 6 hours to get there. Um, I drove the better part of my morning. I think I left home at like 5:30, and I didn't get there until after 12. Yeah, so it was like 6 hours. I've been there, and I've been to the two most recent Atlanta Con shows, and I've been told by several people that if you're a car guy, that no regular IPMS show is going to compare to the Acme show that we've got coming up, and I can't wait. I kind of don't know what to expect, but I've been told that it's on a whole different level.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. And it's, and just speaking on kind of your area, what is the hobby scene kind of like in your area? Because you're not in Georgia, you're in what, South Carolina, right?
I'm in Robbinsville, North Carolina.
Oh, North Carolina. Sorry.
Graham County is actually one of, I think, the two poorest counties in the state. Not just because of the business scene here, but because of the size of the county. It's actually a really small county. We're just below the tail of the dragon. Fred Henry's been up here. So he knows what this place looks like. It's tiny. And I'm probably, as far as I know, I'm the only modeler in the area within like an hour radius. So, we've got a hobby store in the next town, but a lot of those guys do RC stuff. His model stock is not very big. He primarily does RC stuff. So, being the only modeler in the area has its pros and its cons. Like, you're not going to see this stuff anywhere else. But one of the cons is I don't have anybody locally to bounce off of if I want to, chit chat or whatever. I go to work and I talk about it, and everybody's they're either like, dude, you're a massive nerd, or they're like, well, that's cool. Can you build me one? Or will you sell said model? And I've had the Nighthawk. I've had probably 15 offers come from Facebook and Instagram, and that thing's not going nowhere.
You know what? Once you show that, everybody will understand that comment because it's really cool.
Yeah, that thing's not going anywhere. So
no, I mean it's kind of cool to kind of hear about other people's locations on what, because up here we have like one hobby shop, a couple, like a Hobby Lobby and a Michaels, and then after that it's like the tabletop gaming scene like blew up here.
Yeah, and that's the big thing here too. We've got a Harris Casino in Cherokee, and that's like 35 minutes from here. And then there's another Harris Casino in Murphy, and it's about the same distance. And other than that, I mean, aside from the tail of the dragon, we don't really have anything exciting where I live. It's not a heavily populated area. There might be 4,500 people in the county that I live in. Maybe I'd say somewhere between 45 and 55. Not a lot of people. And that's hundreds, like 4,500 to 5,500 people. Very mountainous area. I live in western North Carolina, so I'm in the hills. We don't have a lot here. So aside from the casinos and the tail of the dragon, there's really no excitement up here. For me to get on the hobby scene, I've got to drive an hour and a half south of here into upper middle Georgia, to go be around the people that I share common interests with. So
yeah, because there's really nothing north of you either, right?
not really. I mean, I'm sure there's some stuff in Kentucky and the Virginias, and but I've never been up there, so I don't know. Knoxville, Tennessee is not very far from where I live. Maybe an hour and a half ish to get there.
Okay.
I'd have to go up the dragon to get up there, and I'm sure that I'm sure they have their own scene, because IPMS has got a show that they do there annually. But I haven't spent enough time in Knoxville to know what it's like up there either. So I've only been up there think 2 or 3 times.
No, I mean it yeah, it's really cool when once you kind of hear, and living in a small town doesn't always, has its advantages too, because having kids, you don't have to worry about some of the,
Crazy stuff
big
that we
problems.
deal with in the world today. Yeah, I know exactly. I know exactly what you mean, and yeah, it has its pros and cons. We are planning on moving sometime after the first of the year. My wife's getting her degree in December, and we'll be looking to maybe get out of here and go somewhere a little bit more populated. You know, maybe my hobby will take off a little more.
No, that's cool, man. So earlier you said the marbling effect. What is that?
So for me, the way I learned to do it is you pick a panel on any kind of model, just any panel line, it could be any shape, as long as it's a solid panel. And once you have your primer down, and your primer, you need to base your primer on whatever your top color is. If you've got a dark colored finish, you want a darker primer. If you've got a lighter color finish, you want a lighter color primer. Um, but most of my builds are darker colored stuff, so I usually end up with a black primer. So what you do is you shoot your primer, and then you'll swap to a highlight color. It can be like a white, a gray, or a brown. For me, most of the time it's a white color. And what you do is you take your airbrush, you drop your PSI, and I usually take the end off my airbrush, the little nozzle cover. I'll pull it off, and it allows, instead of the airbrush creating a fan where it flows out like this, it kind of straightens it up, and you can get in there tighter to what you're working on. And you'll use your airbrush. You'll go in and do like lazy eights and just zigzags and stuff, as long as they fit within the confines of that panel line. And what I'll do is I won't address the panel line itself at all. And then once you've got your top color, like say with a plane, like my B52 back there, you started off with a black primer and you're using white for your pre-shade or your marbling. You come in with the gunship gray color and you'll just modulate it where you're filling in certain areas and leaving other areas lower or higher. And what you end up with is this really nice sort of mix match, just blotchy kind of color, which we got here on the XJRF 100, where you see the green isn't uniform. You can see traces of like brown and white and some black, darker areas in the color. And for me, that's how I use my colors to get the marbled look.
No, I mean that's an interesting way to, do your paint jobs. Is that how you learned that was just mostly through the planes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I learned the salt technique also doing planes. I've got a F-18 in there that it was the first model that I built where I used the salt technique, and I used that over marble finish. But pretty much every one of my planes that I've built, I've marbled the paint instead of it, except for I think the Blue Angels F-18, because those planes are always immaculate. They're cleaned meticulously before and after shows, so you're not going to see that technique on those planes. They're also finished in a gloss blue, where 98% of your other planes are going to be finished like a flat color. So yeah, it was one of those techniques that I haven't done it so many times. I learned the tips and tricks needed to pull it off. So
No, I mean that's really cool, and and it looks, visually interesting. You know what I mean? Like it gives you that depth.
yeah,
It makes it really, really cool.
Absolutely.
So with that, what are some of the other techniques you like using?
Well, one of my favorite things, you don't get it so much with cars and trucks because, usually they don't get too awful dirty. But one of my favorite things about building planes is the weathering stage. Um, and if you set up your primer, your pre-shade or marbling layer, and then your top coat, if you set those up correctly, when you get ready to weather, it's really going to accentuate your paint. Um, and weathering has always been one of my favorite things to do, especially with planes. Like right now, um, as you guys can see, the B-52 is, I don't know how well you guys can see that. She's really clean right now, but this has been marbled and all that fun stuff already. Uh, I'm hoping the weathering stage, really takes that to the next level. That's, just one of the fun
So
parts.
so on the weathering stage, are you using oils or are you using acrylics?
I use a little bit of everything. Like two of the two of the big things I like using the most are these Windsor and Newton oil washes. I'll use this on exhausts. I'll use it for like hydraulic stains, streaks, stuff like that. But this is going to be a plug. I promise I'm not getting paid to say this. My favorite um, weathering compound to use, period, on anything is this Flory Models wash. This is a clay based wash, and the way this stuff sets up is you just pour it into like a little container and take a brush and just streak it. You could turn this stuff up and dump it on whatever it is you're working on, and it will dry like a clay. And you just get a paper towel and wipe it off. And it sets up in panel lines and stuff like that. I do have the Tamiya washes as well, which I like to use on some, smaller parts where a brush won't get into very well. This has got a brush built onto the inside of the cap. It's a really narrow brush. Um, I do use pigments from time to time from Ammo Mig. These are really good. Uh, but yeah, mostly it's the oil wash and clay based washes that I like to use the most of.
So is that clay stuff from Flory Models? Is that a dark brown or like a light tan?
He's got them in different colors. Like
Oh, okay.
you can get a black wash, you can get brown, dark brown. I think he's got some gray stuff too that he makes, but I've only ever had the browns and the blacks. And for me, depending on what kind of plane I'm building, uh, and how much use it would see in real life would dictate what wash I used. Like a lot of my big high end fighter jets, like the F-15, the F-14, I just used black washes for those. But like on the A-10 Warthog that I built, because that plane usually sees a shitload of abuse, I used brown because it's a little bit more. It just for me is a little bit more vibrant. And, A-10s are usually really really dirty. So
No, that's really really cool. So what is your? Let's go into tools a little bit. You said airbrush. So what airbrushes are you using?
I have two Awada HPCS Eclipse airbrushes. When I started airbrushing, I was using the Awada Neo, and it's a good airbrush. I wanted to try something a little bit different. And like, yeah, now I'm using the HPCS Eclipse, and it's a great airbrush. Love that thing.
So When you're cutting your styrene and stuff, what are you using to do that?
I picked up this really nifty tool here from a website. I can't remember what website it was, but this is the Northwest Shortline Chopper, and it's got a blade. It's got a blade on the inside of the handle here. You got to wash because this thing will cut the crap out of you. But it's got a blade. It's got a blade built in here that's just a replaceable blade. You can order more of them, but it's got these really nice little like jig fittings here that can be removed, and you can cut stuff on an angle. It's got a nice mat here, like you would see that you use on your desk, your cutting mat, and that's what I like to use to cut my rod stock and my my square tubing. Now, as far as styrene sheet goes, like the Plasticard that I use, which is the same Plasticard that pretty much everybody else uses. A lot of people will use X-Acto blades on these. I don't. When I cut my Plasticard, I always use a panel line scriber, because once it digs that first trench, you know, you might score it 3 more times and your piece is completely cut. You know, I've seen people with X-Acto blades have to sit there and cut on something for 10 minutes to get it cut out, and I just use a panel line scriber. I've got a panel line scriber that I use to do that, and then I've got my other one that I use just strictly for panel lines.
No, I mean that's a cool tip, because I've panel line scriber. I wouldn't have thought about that. That's
Yeah.
no
That and you don't have to worry about the blades breaking off or chipping the end. And like, I've used X-Acto blades before to cut these and put just a little bit too much pressure on them, and they'll break just the very tip off because it's really thin. And I've went crazy and accidentally nicked a part. And an X-Acto blade will cut you faster than a scriber tool will too. So that's another thing.
I know this for me, right? Having a 9-year-old, I can't just have X-Acto blades sitting out on my desk.
That's how it is for me. My son's 9 and my daughter's 7, and both of them are high functioning autistic. And I keep my X-Acto blades in a little container like this, and I keep them put up and back where they're not easily accessible, because you know as well as I do that if kids can get into something, they will get into something.
Yeah. And even that chopping tool, that to me seems like way better. It's just for that aspect of it, right? You can leave that on your, and they might figure out how to cut something with it, but they're going to cut themselves. It's
a good amputation device if it's used for that. But yeah, I keep all of my sharp objects put up in these extremely fancy Walmart filing cabinet things that I bought.
Oh yeah.
So.
Well, and you keep most of your tools in a Craftsman toolbox behind you, right?
Yeah, I picked this up at a move the B52 out of the way. I'll actually take the phone here and I will turn you guys around. Like I said, I'm on a new phone right now, so I'm still learning how to play with this thing. But I keep all of my tools and the stuff that I use in this big Craftsman toolbox that I bought at A4. And up top is where I keep all of my paints. My airbrushes are in here. All of my Tamiya glosses are here. Some of my zero paints. I've got some 2Ks back there.
How do you like those zero paints?
The zero paints are good. I haven't gotten to use a lot of it yet, but like I've got an Eleanor build coming up, and this is what I'm going to be using on that. But from what I have used, they're really, nice paint. They remind me a lot of the Gravity Colors paints that I use.
Oh, okay.
And then in here, I've got my XF series Tamiya paints, which are your dulls, and they're all in, their number orders. Here I've got some sandpapers, just paper, just some random stuff. Here's where I keep my gravity colors, glues, polishing compounds, stuff like that. Here I've got my collection of tires and wheels that I use on my model cars and trucks. A base that I've been working on for like 2 years that I could finish in like 15 minutes, but I'm lazy. I've got my Vistaprint shop cards, which when I ordered these, I found out that this is not the size of shop cards that my peers use, but they're cool anyway. Just some other random stuff, some toilet paper, not for, toilet use. I use this for cleaning off the clay base wash that I use. You want to use some kind of paper towel or toilet paper that is not, won't fall apart when you rub it over a wet surface. And I couldn't even begin to tell you what brand that is. And then here I've got some more random stuff like weathering stuff. I got my Tamiya powders back there. My pigments.
What are those?
Clay base.
What are those?
These?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I use to wire my cars and trucks up. Like, for example, on the Nighthawk here, you zoom in and you see like the throttle body wire that I've got. Let's see, don't want to hit it too hard. Like the throttle body wiring that's there, starter wires, stuff like that. Wiring for the batteries. There's some wires in the cab and stuff. That's what I use these for. These are copper base wire. So they're really malleable. You can bend them really easy. And they're just, I think it's like anodized. It's almost like an anodizing process that they use to get these to change color. And as you can see, I've used the crap out of some of them. But you can get these from Michael's for like, I don't know, like 12, 15 bucks, something like that. And I started using these when I built my Coyote F100 drag truck in there in the display case, which I think you used as the thumbnail for the video. But all the wiring in that was done with this. And yeah, as you can see, it's used throughout the build on this thing. I wired the starter, the radiator, the fans, all that stuff's wired using this. So
are there different thicknesses to those, or that's just all the same thickness?
That's all the same thickness.
Okay.
Now for my vacuum lines from the wastegates and the blow-off valves, and then your relief lines on the turbos and the copper brake lines on this truck, those are using a little bit thicker wire. But yeah, that's pretty nice stuff to have. If you're a big detail guy like I am, this stuff right here is really nice to have. And then in the bottom of the toolbox down here is where I keep my portable paint booth. I don't have a whole lot of room to work with here. So whenever I'm done with the paint booth, I clean it up. I vacuum the filter covers out and I put it back up in here. This opens and comes up and then slides back. I'd open it, but my chair's kind of in the way.
No worries.
So, but yeah, that's that on some of the tools that I use. And then down here, I've got some of my other various stuff like my mic, my X-Acto files, different sandpapers, other stuff. And then my power tools, like my Dremel and soldering iron, stuff like that's all up in here. And then I've got my other wire stock here. You can see through the bottoms, just got other wire stock and stuff like that in it. I've got styrene in there as well. And then up here is like the aluminum foil. I use that for my ocean display bases. I've got, you know, foam for finishing and yeah, just all kind of stuff. I've got some resin parts from Iceman here. Scenes Unlimited boxes up there. And then all of my favorite stuff from like Jimmy Flintstone and Miguel and just other kits. They're all, you know, like in these two. And then here under the bed, I keep these totes, these plastic totes that I've got labeled, you know, car and truck parts. I've got another one under there that's just for planes. I got another one that's for my display base stuff, you know, like my felt bottom that I use to keep the base from scratching the crap out of whatever it's on. And then I've got another box that I keep all of my restock in, like extra paint that won't fit in the toolbox, the filters that go on the paint booths. I got that in there, extra pipettes, just, you know. And like I tell people all the time, they're like, oh yeah, I bet modeling's expensive. And it doesn't have to be expensive. But for the most part, it kind of is. But like the most expensive part of modeling to me, in my experience, is not modeling. Building and spraying these things and finishing them up and throwing them in the display case is not the expensive part. The expensive part is restocking supplies that you've used and maintaining the equipment that you use. And one of the easiest ways to maintain the equipment that you use, and I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, is to make sure that you're storing it properly. Because you don't want to leave this stuff just out, you know, to accrue damage and stuff like that.
Like the example is the airbrush, right? You got to make sure all the caps and stuff are on there, right?
Yep. And every time, I know that a lot of people don't. A lot of people, when they're done using their airbrush, they'll run thinner down in it and then they'll rack it up and they'll leave it sitting there until the next time they need it. Every afternoon that I use my airbrush, as soon as I'm done using it, I break it completely down and I throw it in the wash. And the wash that I use is Medea's airbrush cleaner. I've got a container up here that is full of this stuff. It's you know, it's not irritable to the little rubber O-rings and stuff that you see in airbrush. This stuff doesn't affect it because it's like a soap base. So it's really easy on the rubber parts. When I started building models, or started back building models, and I got into using the airbrush, I was using mineral spirits, and it was chewing through O-rings. Like every time I used my airbrush, I would have to go in and replace all the little O-rings and stuff on the airbrush, because every time I'd clean them, they'd get chewed up. So.
No, I'm with Fred when it comes to the airbrush. The video tutorial Gil has, Red Dragon has for that stuff. Like I can spend $12 and have like a year's supply of, you know. And that's some of the cool things about YouTube, right? You can find cheaper ways to keep the hobby expensive and not buy stuff in the hobby section.
Yep. And you know, it's like I said earlier, you know, it's not, to me, building and just the action of painting and assembling is not the expensive part. To me, the maintenance is the expensive part. And once you get it down how you like to take care of maintaining your products, you know, it just gets easier from there. So like I said, every time I'm done using my airbrush, I always break them down and clean them out, put them back together, make sure that they're shooting fine, and you know.
So so is that pretty much all the tools you have, right?
You know, for the most part, I you know, I would break out the diorama stuff that I use, but I've got a crap load of that. Just, you know, some of the other stuff I like using. When it comes to my dioramas and stuff like that, I'm a really big fan of Woodland Scenics. I
What was
just
that?
Woodland Scenics is like a railroad foliage kind of replication company, if I could, you know,
Oh,
make
okay.
it sound complicated. But they build or they make ballasts like rocks and different foliage and trees and um, different tools that you can use to make these really awesome dioramas. They've got different size of they call it ballast, and all ballast is just like little tiny crushed up rocks. And that's the cool thing about nature is nature doesn't necessarily have to have a scale. Like you can use the same stuff that I have on a 25th scale car diorama. You can use it on a 48th scale plane build. You know, it's you know, the sky's the limit. But I'm a really big fan of Woodland Scenics and their products.
Yeah, no, I think I know which one you're talking because that's what my hobby shop has is a railroad. That's what I
Yeah.
thought it was.
Yeah.
Uh, but I know with me, I've been getting like the terrain stuff
Mm-hmm.
and like
Yep.
you know, and I mean I only paid $6 for that. I mean,
Yep.
there's all kinds of stuff you can you know.
Like I will go here just to give an example of some of the stuff that I have that I use that I like to use. Well, I hope that doesn't fall. Let's sorry it's taking so long. You start moving stuff around and next thing you know, you got a toppling mess going on. All right. I think right there is gonna work. But this right here, this is just some of the products that I use from Woodland Scenics. They got different turfs, different colors, the different types. Just to name a couple of things that I like to use from them. But this is some of their grass turf. Say you buy one of their mats that's like finished in green or a brown or whatever. I will use the turf as you kind of treat the mat like a primer almost. And then this is kind of to give it some texture. And then you'll lay your grass down over the top of this stuff and you can just build it up. And then, you know, these guys, their ballast or gravel rock is awesome. Really good stuff. I used this on a driveway style base a while back ago that I finished for a buddy of mine, a really good family friend of mine. I built a 67 Mustang GT for him, and this exact stuff is what I used for the driveway part of the base. And yeah, it's just really, really good stuff. They've got a lot of nice tools too that they provide you with. Like example, they've got different types of glues. They got these really nice sprayers, and you know they've got really nice white glues. It's just they're really an awesome company to work with.
So with that grass, do you have to have the static charger, or is that just the one that you
No.
can lay out?
No, this isn't like a static. I know what you're talking about. This isn't like a static grass.
Okay.
Hey, I mean, it might work that way. I don't know. Me and my wife are really big fans of this YouTube channel called Mini Bricks, and a lot of the guys here have probably watched the channel before. They do, in my opinion, the best dioramas on the internet. Period. Their stuff is killer. I mean, absolutely killer. And they use a lot of static grass. But the way you apply this is you've got your base, and I'll go in with my scenic sprayer, and I'll just, or scenic sprayer, but spray bottle for people. You just shoot the base down with this, and you just take this stuff out in like clumps, and you just sprinkle it on like you would put seasoning on food. You just lay it on there, let it settle for just a few minutes, and then go back over it with the glue. And because this stuff dries matte and it thins out as it dries, you can't even tell that you've sprayed it. Like, you'll spray this stuff on something and you'll swear to God that you ruined it. But once it's dry, it thins out and it gets really like a matte kind of color to it. You can't even tell that it's there. And it'll hold, for example, Woodland has got different sizes of this ballast. This is just the medium stuff. I've got a concoction over here that I made, which is in this cup container. This is different, like 3 or 4 different size ballasts. And this is meant to kind of emulate gravel in a driveway, like the different sizes of gravel, whether it's like surge or crusher run, or different types of gravel. And even the giant chunk pieces in here, that glue holds it down. You can take the base after a couple of days of letting it dry. You can take the base and turn it upside down and shake the crap out of it, and this stuff won't come off. It's crazy how strong it is.
No, the railroad guys have got
They've
some
got
of
it
the
down.
unique
Like, that's been where I've went to learn how to do diorama stuff, because like you said, the railroad guys, they've got this stuff down. I mean, they really do. And that's where Woodland Scenics, most of their efforts have went towards helping the railroad guys out. But because nature doesn't really have a scale, you can apply what you've learned there anywhere else, whether you're building tanks, planes, cars, trucks, any of that stuff. It applies to all. It really does.
Rig zinc.
Make sure to keep my Woodland Scenic stuff in the kitchen. Might put it on a steak. I'd like to see a reaction video
to that
of Rick eating a piece of steak that's been seasoned with Woodland Scenic's ballast. That would be an awesome video. I feel like that would go viral pretty quick.
All right, man. So do you want to show some of the stuff? I mean, you've kind of shown a little bit, but of the stuff you got on your bench.
Yeah, I can go over it. Let's see. I'll take this camera and get it turned around again. Like I said, everything I do, I use a phone. So there it goes. It's swapping. But we'll start off with obviously my favorite build, my favorite car truck build of all time. This is taking on the name Project Nighthawk. It is a Peterbilt 359 cab by Jimmy Flintstone. It's a chopped cab. And it works with the Revell Peterbilt Wrecker cab parts, like the interior tub, mirrors, seats, stuff like that, even though the seats and stuff that are in this cab are not the ones that came out of that kit. It's just the tub and the dash. Everything else is all aftermarket stuff. You can sort of see the seats in there with the lap belts and stuff. The chassis is built out of 2 different size styrene strip, 0.438 for the rear section. And then right here under the cab, it starts 0.125, I think, and it stays that size all the way to the front. And then I knew that I wanted to do some kind of like V-style grill. But as big as this truck is, and you don't really realize how big this model is until you put like a normal size model next to it. This thing is actually bigger than a regular 18-wheeler kit. I knew that if I ran with like a normal 25th scale grill and fairing, that it would look way too small and it would sort of disappear in the front. So I got a 16th scale Ford Phaeton parts kit and robbed the grill out of it, and then I took a Dremel and milled the insert out and replaced it with some metal mesh that I put a crease in, bent it to the shape, and then went in and trimmed everything out. The front suspension is an airbag front suspension. It's been widened about 1 inch so that the track width up front matches that of the rear. And it's 4-linked here on both sides. And you can see the steering rod coming out of the side of the cab, and it runs to the front. And then you got your steering stabilizer all the way across to the other side. So I feel like it would be a functional front end. And part of the reason why this front end is so wide is because I wanted to make sure that if it were a real truck, that these 50-inch tires will be able to clear the turbos. Which brings me to the next part. I'm a big fan of Cletus McFarland. I'm sure a lot of people here know who Cletus McFarland is, and he's got this badass C5 drag car called Leroy the Savage. And I've always been a fan of Leroy's turbo setup, which is what this is based on.
Oh.
So what I went with was an Oslo 3D printed resin Cummins 14.8 liter VT903 V8. And this is found in a lot of old oil-filled trucks and stuff like this. It's a really durable engine. But the engine stock is a non-intercooled turbo diesel. Which, I spoke about earlier, that the intake is completely scratch built, which again allowed me to go sort of sky's the limit with how I wanted to design the intake. But it's all, fuel railed out, and all the lines are plumbed. It's got a scratch built radiator in it. It's got a scratch built intercooler. The turbos are from Ron Olson. They're twin 102 millimeter turbos. And then I've ran them into, these nice 3D printed big block Chevy headers, which I just turned them up on themselves and then finished them off with the exhaust being made out of styrene tube. And then, I wired up all the batteries and the throttle body, starter, radiator fan, stuff like that. And then at the back, like this sheet panel through here is also functional. I use that to help strengthen up the back of the truck because it's actually a really heavy model. But it's got a old Peterbilt tank on the back. It's pogo sticks all scratch built. It's got a fifth wheel from a Peterbilt kit. The rear suspension is a American Industrial Truck Models Mac 80,000 pound hard bar suspension. The wheels I got from eBay. These are actually for a 125th scale or 24th scale SCX 24 RC truck. And then I got up with our buddy Miguel over at Devil Dog Games and gave him the specs for my bead locks and how I wanted the bead locks to be set up. I gave him the diameter, the wall thickness, and the ID thickness. and he went in and 3D printed some really awesome bead locks for the wheels. And then the tires are also SCX 24 Super Swamper boggers. And in this scale, they're equivalent to a 50-inch tire. So it's a big truck. And then while I was working on this, I was also working on this, which started out, the cab started out as a 71. I think it's a 71 F100 Sport custom cab. It started out as a Mobius. And then I just remember walking around the last AtlantaCon show thinking, you know, how cool would an old Ford truck be back-halved with a Le Mans prototype car? So I picked up a Tamiya Jaguar XJR non-kit and completely back-halved the truck with the prototype kit. And then I robbed a set of tires and wheels from a 20th scale F1 kit and did some aero work. Went in and cut a giant Nakaduck for the front and cut it in the hood, and went in and wide bodied the front of the truck and lowered it. And this is what we ended up with. And this is what I used my marbling technique on, which you can see across the roof of the truck and the hood. That is, you know, a purposeful paint job. It's, you know, been painted to look like that. And then I topped everything off with Tamiya's dark copper.
So that the front bumper, is that part of the F1 kit?
The front bumper that's on the truck is actually from the kit, the one that runs directly below the grill. This piece right here, the giant splitter, is from the Jaguar Le Mans prototype car. And then I scratch built the wickers that go on the sides here.
Oh, okay.
And scratch built the side skirts all the way back to the rear upper skirt wicker, which is here. And then the rear clamshell out of the kit has got a resin scoop that I bought from Competition Resins, where I had to go in and pie cut the tip and then fold it down on itself and then fill it back in with Bondo and styrene. And I went in and filled everything with, you know, like I said, just Bondo and some other putties. And then the spoiler is actually a leftover top fuel spoiler that I went in and added these giant side plates on. And then I just finished everything off with you know, some nice exhaust tips. And then I opened the wheel or tire covers on the clamshell. I opened those up to accommodate these giant tires that are on the back. And then I just recently finished this, which had been working on for a really long time. This is a 70.5 AMT Camaro Z28 with a 632 swap. And I just finished it up. It's C7 Z06 wheels. It's airbag, front and rear, 4-link, H-pipe, side pipe exhaust. It's been wide bodied. It's got resin wide bodies, fender, basically like an extension on the fender. And then I had to go in and Bondo them. And it's finished in Gravity Colors, Chevrolet Red Hot. First time using bare metal foil on a model car. Wasn't really sure how to react to this particular build before it was finished, but I'm really happy with it now that it's done and it's over with. And Yeah,
So,
that's
so before doing the bare metal foil, how would you do the trim pieces, or would you not just do that?
before I was using these, which are Molotov paint pens.
Oh,
And
okay.
with these, you got to be extremely careful with these because you can screw something up really quick. Luckily, though, if you go overboard and you accidentally nick something with these, they're easy to clean. Like I can get a lot of this stuff off with water as long as it's not dried up. But yeah, like the bare metal foil is nice looking and everything. It's kind of a love-hate relationship. If it goes down good, it's just applying it really is the hard part. Once you've got it cut and in there, it's nice. But yeah, before I used this, I was pretty much strictly using Molotov paint pens
So
to get my
which one do
chrome.
you think looks better, Josh?
I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm actually more of a fan of the paint pens than I am of the BMF. But I will give it to the bare metal foil. It's more vibrant to me. It just looks better. The paint pens, you know it's passable. If what you're trying to chrome isn't too big, I guess. Like say you're doing like this trim piece around the doors and stuff. If that's all you're going to be doing, and of course use the paint pen. Because you don't have to cut a tiny little piece of BMF. But for a bigger part, like the window trim around this car, the BMF, I think it's just a little bit more vibrant and it just looks better. But yeah, like Fred just said, I use both of them. Like on this car, this is BMF around the window trim, and then the trim around the door is actually Molotov.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. But right now, I'm also working, like, to show you a build in progress. I'm hoping to have this thing done by the time Acme comes around. This is a Pro Mod 70 CUDA. It started out as a Revell 70 Plymouth AAR CUDA. And I went in and scratch built the entire chassis scratch built out of .080 styrene rod. And then the engine is an Iceman Collections blown Hemi Proline motor. And I've got you can't see it very well, but there's a resin Ron Olson TH4. It's a turbo 400 trans back there behind it. And then the wheels are aluminum wheels from a guy that I purchased them. I purchased the wheels on eBay from a guy who does slot cars. And yeah, like Fred said, you better get busy, bro. Yeah, I know. I got a lot of work left to get done on this thing. I ran into a little snag earlier with the little blow-by fittings that are on the valve covers are actually hitting the inside of the hood. Other than those, the hood fits fine. And that's a detail that I really want to leave on this engine because I'm wanting to do a catch can. And I've just got to figure out a way to get those to fit under the hood. So even if I have to notch them and get them to go, I'm probably going to go that route. But that's a project that I'm working on for Acme that's just about wrapped up. And then I've got these two, if I don't drop them before I get to the bench with them. They're a mess right now, but they're most of the way ready to go. I've got a 78 F100 with a very dark secret. It has got a Tesla electric crate engine, and you can't see it hardly under all this stuff, but Miguel designed a really badass battery pack that's going in the bed. This truck's going to get a tonneau cover, sunroof, and hood where it's got plastic Lexan in it where you'll be able to see down through everything. This truck is actually the closest one to being done. And then I've got a 72 F350 four-door where I had to go in and section 2 cabs and put them back together. And it's got a compound turbo Cummins in it. And
Wow.
this thing's crazy. It's almost ready for primer. So I've got at least 2 more here that are just about ready to wrap up. But the big focus for this weekend, starting this evening, in Brian's live, is going to be finishing up all the decal work on the B52. The base is already done. It's already been painted, stained. It's got the felt on the bottom. You can't really see it that well, but it's there. Just got to get some decals on this thing, get it cleared one more time, then take on the weathering. Once the weathering's done, I can dull coat it, and this thing will be done and out of the way. And then I've got a Gravedigger monster truck that I'm building for my son that's almost done, but it's in the box over there, so I won't get it out right now. But yeah, I mean, most of the stuff that I have is either done or almost done. Really, the only one that I'm waiting to finish is the CUDA. It's the one that's got the most amount of work left to do.
So Josh, on those bases, the wooden bases there, are you making those or are you buying those?
Well, I was buying them. They're really nice wood bases. My kids are in there raising Cain right now. But they're really nice, wooden bases that I've been getting from Hobby Lobby, their website. And I just recently bought a Schaefer. It's like I think it's called a Schaefer router. It's a little handheld router, and you can go down to a hardware store and pick up a piece of inch thick wood and go in and put a really nice bezel on it.
Yeah.
And I think now I'm going to start making my own bases, because I also like to build ships, and I've got a 350th scale Yamato behind me that's going on a base that I made. Let's see, I've got the Musashi up there, the Tirpitz, the North Carolina, we've got the Missouri here, I've got the Enterprise here, and from about here on out, I'm going to be using my own bases. But yeah, these bases, like what you just saw, they all came from I believe it was Hobby Lobby.
I know the expensive part with having a router is the bits.
Yeah, those were not cheap. I got this fancy little box of them, and they were like $150. They cost more. They cost more than the router itself did.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I have the Craftsman table.
Yeah.
Router table.
Mm-hmm.
That thing is like money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Money.
Yeah. But
well, Josh, we've been about an hour and 20 minutes. Did you have any questions for me?
Yeah. Actually, yeah. So what got you started doing this stuff? Because I know that you spend a lot of time addressing other modelers and getting their story out there. I think we'd all like to hear how Risdom got his start. So how'd you get into doing this stuff?
So I'm no different than probably anybody. My dad got me a bunch of model kits when I was probably 10, 13, somewhere in there. And then kind of, life gets in the way, sports, high school. Then, got a real job. And then My son's 9, so about 8 years ago, I needed something to get back in with all the stuff that happened to him when he was born. Yeah. So
Did you use that just sort of like as a coping mechanism or something to try to get your mind off the stresses of life? Or
so when my son was born, he was born 3 months early and under 2 pounds. So there's that whole year, right? And then the next year, I was burning myself out at both ends of the candle with dealing with home and work, and then not sleeping. I just started lighting the middle of that candle, and then at some point I just lost a really good paying job and was trying to find work and needed something to kind of do while I was doing that. And
absolutely,
it kind of started there and has just kind of taken off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least you were able to find an outlet, and that's what I talked about. I was talking about earlier is modeling has helped me with my people skills and my patience tremendously. I had a really bad childhood. I'm sure it's cliche. You hear people say that a lot, but I could go on and on and on about it. But it's not important. The fact is I grew up. I'm living a good life now. I got 2 kids, very healthy, very loving. Wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. And I found an outlet that has helped me on so many different levels. I don't just build models because it's something that I'm interested in, or it's something that I'm just doing at that point in time. As far as my hobbies are concerned, all the hobbies I've ever had, I'm more passionate about this than anything I've ever done, aside from being a father and a husband.
See, I don't call it a hobby. I call it me time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if I'm not out here, my wife tells me to come out here. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too. Like my wife wasn't like overly supportive of me doing this when I started, because she was like, "Oh shit, here's something else for him to spend money on that we could be spending on something else." But after doing it for so long, like now she's like, "So what are you doing next? What are you going to do next? You should do something. Let's like do this. Like this would be cool." And she's been like so supportive, at least in like the last 6 months to a year, especially after meeting Fred and Brian and getting on here and meeting all of you guys. She's been so supportive of me doing this hobby. It's been great. It's really been great.
No, I mean it, and that's awesome. When you get your significant other to kind of be part of it or really supportive of it, because
and she's artsy too. Like she makes coasters, she does acrylic paint pours, and she's really big into crafts, and any chance I get to work with her on something, whatever it is, I'm gonna take it. Like for example, I've got a base put up right now that she did a acrylic paint pour on, and it's like this really beautiful, like streaked red, white, and blue. Not really sure what I'm gonna use it for just yet, but I'm gonna use it at some point. But having her be crafty, we're supportive of you, and I just wish she would bring me some pork chop. We might try to line something up for Acme, Papa Z. Don't worry, I'll see what I can do. But having her here and her being crafty and into art and stuff like that, you know, it's made this stuff just that much better for me because, you know, like I'll get in a slum where I don't feel like doing anything and she'll be doing her stuff and then it just motivates me, or, you know, vice versa. Like I'll be in here cranking something out and she'll see me and she'll be like, I'm gonna go paint for a while. I'm like, all right, you know. So it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun having her, you know, to play off of.
Any more questions for me?
I think that's gonna about wrap it up. I know we've got another live we got to get ready for here in just a little while, Mr. Brian Burwell and the Got Fuels Model Car Garage will all be together here shortly. So I just you know, I know that you took a break from doing these videos for a while, and you know, I just wanted to tell you thank you for bringing me on and taking time out of your day to ask me questions and you know, have a sit down with me. You know, it means a lot. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, no problem, man. It's kind of cool how everybody has been enjoying these. It's
Been great.
like once, like I told everybody I was going to take summer off because we were going to do a bunch of traveling. Well, with the gas prices when they went from like $3 to like $5.50, kind of threw all that into a, you know, tailspin. But we got to have fun this summer, and you know, and I think I am going to take breaks just to kind of keep the show,
keep it fresh,
seasons, but like to keep it moving. Because I think some people, they're going to enjoy it, and then that break, and then you're going to want to see the next one. You know what I mean?
And it just keeps you from getting burnt out on it too, because like you know, Brian said something a while back ago. You know, he took a break from modeling, and I remember being on a live with him one night and him saying that you don't want to do it so much that it feels like a job, you know. So taking breaks to keep it sort of fresh is it's really important. And you know, what he said is the truth. You know, you don't want it to feel like you don't want it to feel like it's a job. So taking breaks to sort of replenish your mind is a very, very big thing.
No, I mean, and it's the awesome part that everybody, like, I share this across Facebook too. So like, it's just really awesome how everybody's really, really enjoyed these. So, you know, long as people still want to come on, I'll keep doing it. We got to get Rick Zink on here though.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And yeah, Gil's doing the live training or the class today. So I think it's number 2 for the zombie bust. So that should be starting here pretty soon. So that'll be, and I really encourage people to go watch those and try it. Just try it. Something different, you know. But all right, man. Well, I'm gonna end this if you ain't got any more questions. Thank you for coming on. And I will talk to you in a couple minutes, okay?
All right, man. Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate everybody's support. I know a lot of the guys in the chat right now are all, you know, people that we're familiar with and that we talk to frequently. And, you know, again, like I said, I appreciate everybody's support. I really do. Y'all help keep me going. So, and like I said, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll
absolutely
talk to you in a minute. All right, everybody. That was Josh from xtremis Models. We got to interact with him for about an hour and a half. We will see you guys next week. Now, the episodes coming up, some are going to be on Saturday, some are going to be on Sunday, because now we're out of COVID. So people are going to be working Saturdays. So we're just going to make the episodes available when everybody's able to do it. So I know there's a couple times where I'm not available on a Saturday. I'm available on a Sunday. So, but see you guys next week. Bye.